Hello, folks, and welcome back to the fifth Adamola Bookmen podcast. I'm here with my friend John Coughlin, and this week we're reading Joey Barton, No Nonsense.
Yeah, Joey Barton. We're very topical, aren't we? Maybe we can start even like the title, No Nonsense. What do you think? Is it a good title for the book?
I would disagree because I think there's quite a lot of nonsense in there.
I think he could have called it nonsense.
He could have called it nonsense. No, you're absolutely right. There is a lot of babbling babble and self-justification in this book. Yeah. I mean, pages and pages worth.
Let's get into it. Before that, I just wanted to say thank you. We wanted to say thank you to the people who have followed us on our socials. We're on Twitter. We're at Bookmen Pod, and we're on Instagram as well. The Adamola Bookmen Podcast. And I also wanted to say thank you to Dara Fenlon, who's provided the music for this podcast. There are links to Dara's music on Spotify, on our social media. Thank you very much, Dara.
Chapter 1 doesn't actually start with his childhood. It starts with this line. The smackhead in the corner is silently enduring the agonies of withdrawal. Hollow-eyed, sallow-skinned and sweating profusely, he constantly mops his face with rough paper towels taken from the waiting room toilet. His plight is hypnotic and faintly heroic because, like me, he's here to visit a friend. Well, here we are, folks. Here we are in Joey Barton's world, and we're in the gutter. It's a horrible, sordid world of violence, and not necessarily his fault, of violence and prison and unpleasantness. In his defense, he was born into this. I mean, it was a very harrowing sounding childhood, right?
Yeah. All of the books that we've read, they've come from difficult backgrounds. But this was just another level, right?
I mean, it did seem to me, I mean, I'm not saying financially they were the poorest, but in terms of just an absolutely chaotic and violent life, he was surrounded by it at all times. Cousins, uncles, dad, all the time, violence was there. It was a story which he sort of portrays as a positive, but he's in a fight with a kid, and the kid's dad comes. The kid's dad sort of defending his son, so he goes to get his dad, and then his dad drags him out of his fucking house and brays him with like a stick that's lying there just in front of the whole it's so horribly traumatic. It's an ugly world he's born into.
Yeah, that's like, I thought that was, just a sad kind of upbringing. Now, not to say he spoke positively about a lot of people in his life, particularly his grandmother, and who seemed to be kind of a matriarch of the family, his paternal grandmother. He spoke quite fondly of his father, even though, as you say, his father seemed to be quite a violent man. He said at one point that his father never, was violent with him and his siblings, but then he did say at one point that his father hit him. So, I guess maybe he's got kind of he's speaking in some kind of comparative sense. I didn't really follow, but anyway.
I mean, from the sounds of it, his dad, comparatively, I don't necessarily associate with violence. His dad was a role model. I mean, his dad played football, and that gave him status on the estate, right? That was what set him apart, and I think that what must have got young Joey thinking this was the path to tread. Yeah,
so his father played for a local team in Liverpool called Newcastle United, a non-league team. They played in a kind of a non-league final of some description in Wembley, which he didn't play in, but he did play in a game that was featured on Match of the Day. So there you go, like not professional, but not a million miles from professional football either.
No, that's great. I mean, I'd be delighted if I appeared for, in any capacity, on Match of the Day. If I just saw my face in the crowd, I'd be happy with that.
His dad was a boozer though, and he says at one point that he definitely could have made it, but he had the talent, but perhaps not the discipline.
Yeah, having the discipline is something that Joey Barton is very, very proud that he does have. My goodness me, he tells us again and again and again about his application, his hard work, his training. My God, there is, I don't think I'd be exaggerating to say 100 pages of Joey Barton's patting himself on the back about how hardworking he is. And no doubt he is, because he wasn't fast, was he? And he's not tall. So I guess he had to work very hard to get where he was, but my goodness, he's aware of it.
Yeah, so he sees himself, I think, as an outlier in a kind of a world of outliers. He says that every professional footballer is kind of mad, which was an interesting kind of part of the book. He said that they're all kind of obsessed or extremely talented, but they're not normal people. Footballers are just manic kind of obsessives or whatever. Kind of contradicts himself a bit later on when he describes particularly, well, disinterested players, but he singles out foreign players for that. But
foreigners.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, but he sees himself in this world of people who are kind of pathologically driven and single-minded. He sees himself as, always going further than everyone else.
Do you think that's true? Do you think all footballers have to be that way?
Like, on the basis of what Joey says in the book, I don't think so. Because, I said,
that's it. I think maybe Joey Barton had to be that way to overcome his lack of height, his lack of pace. But I think there are probably naturals who don't take such a black and white approach to their football as Joey does.
He's absolutely crazy, right? Like he says, he says, I literally keep a black book on his own teammates, not even the people he's playing against. And this is to keep track of their weaknesses so he can exploit them in the event of some kind of conflict in the future.
Who was it he had to get rid of? Kevin Horlock. Bang. Ali Benabia. Bang. Who else is there? Old Isle Berkovic. Bang. Some kid in the youth system. Bang. They're all dead. I think he calls them dead. Dead. You're dead to me. You're dead to me. You're dead to me.
Yeah, wow. What a character. And he was at Everton, his boyhood club. And he was a fan, like, growing up. Do you remember this Lilleshall School of Excellence? I remember reading about that when I was a kid, all right?
And certainly footballers of a certain age, they all went there, right? Gerrard was there. Owen was there.
So he was, another common theme in the book is like how something almost happened, but he didn't get it because, he was misunderstood or he was unfairly treated, really.
Let's get it in now. There's a lovely moment where he goes on the pitch with Xabi Alonso, and I've got something against him and he's got something against me. He thinks that I smashed his head and knocked him out. I think that he stopped me playing alongside Steven Gerrard for Liverpool, which would have led me to play for England. One thing is real, Joey, where you smash someone's head in. The other thing is totally in your head, where sorry, fucking Alonso, if it wasn't for him, I would have played alongside Gerrard for Liverpool and probably got more recognition at the England level. Yeah, I reckon he's got the bigger gripe against you, Joey. But again, we're jumping ahead of ourselves. I just thought that was a very funny line.
Yeah, it's just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Anyway, so when he was at Everton, he nearly he was whatever clubs send the players to be considered for Lilleshall, this school of excellence that existed and then no longer exists, like an English Clairefontaine, wasn't it? That was the idea, I think.
Exactly that.
So he was at Everton, and his gripe here was that he was asked to play various different positions in the kind of training games and they overlooked him as a result. And then got let go by Everton. Size was an issue, although he's also very slow. So this is what he says himself, that he was slow and small, so he tended to be overlooked. So he got booted out of Everton.
Here we see a bit of a Barton steal, of which he talks about a lot. I mean,
this
is really a little cry. I think he's at pains to point out it wasn't for very long. And then he knuckled down. He wasn't going to let that get him down. He'll work harder. He'll do better, and he'll make it. He used it as something to spur him on. So good for him.
One of the kind of fun bits of the book is his dad's advice about how to fight people. That was kind of fun, wasn't it?
This is my first reading of this book. I read this probably close to the time it came out, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. What I did take from it, which which I've not ever used in practice, but theoretically is the advice his dad gave for fighting. What you got to do, you got to pull your opponent's shirt over their head. You got to keep your head down. You got to keep his head down. You got to keep punching up. His shirt's over his head, so he can't get you. You keep getting it, get it until whack, you get him on the jaw. Now, I'm not a fighter, but I have described that technique for fighting to my wife. Describe how I'm a tough guy, and she believed me, and she was like, "Oh wow, we got in a scuffle." I was like, "Don't worry, darling, I know what I'll do. I'll pull the man's shirt out over his head. I'll get my head down. I'll keep him locked down, and I'll uppercut." Yeah. So good advice from his dad. Not all bad there.
He went from Everton to City, and that's where he kind of made it. When he kind of got near the first team, he started observing first team players. Like, this book is absolutely humorless. There's not a joke in there, but there are a couple of things that he observed that I guess are funny. And one of them was his description of Pierce preparing for the game. That was kind of fun, wasn't it? Do you remember?
His underpants and his shin pads, just working himself up, baby. Yeah, he was. You don't tell Piercy, I mean, like, shit, Pierce in a pair of underpants and shin pads. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? He does learn from the senior pros. He's very proud of the time he snuck in to sit with Peter Schmeichel whilst he was getting a massage, and asked him all the questions. And Peter Schmeichel told him he'd not had a bad game in 4 years. You know, he may have made mistakes. He may have let goals in he wish he wouldn't have wanted to, but he hasn't had a bad game in 4 years. And that's a great mentality, isn't it? And you can see that Schmeichel would have that, right?
Yeah. The incident of what ought to have been his debut was quite fun, wasn't it?
All right, so let's go on. So Joey Barton's, in quote marks, debut. The year was 2002, 23rd of November. He came in to find his name on the bench. His name's on the bench. He's number 41. The game's going. Keegan, come on, Joey, warm up. You're going on. Obviously, this is the big moment. The big moment. I'm ready to go. Hang on, where's my where's my shirt gone? Someone stole his shirt. Someone nicked his shirt, and Ali Benabia got on instead. Like, tough break. He didn't get called up again for 5 months. I mean, that's a long time. That's a long time to be thinking about that.
But they were going to sell him to Scunthorpe. Like, that would have been a serious downgrade. But luckily for Joey, he damaged his inner ear going up for a header and spent 6 months in a spinning room instead rather than going to Scunthorpe.
Not all bad though, because this gave him the opportunity to get into the Smiths.
Yeah.
Are you aware that Joey Barton has appeared in a Morrissey video?
Well, you know, given his recent turn in right wing politics, it's.
Those two would get along, I think. Yeah. So this car accident wrote off his car, but one of his friends in football lent him 23 grand for a car. Who was that friend?
Lovely old Robbie Fowler, or Bob as he calls him.
No, not called fucking Bob Fowler. That's ridiculous. Bob Fowler works on an allotment. No,
it's Bob Fowler.
It's not Bob Fowler. I'm not having Bob Fowler. That's absolutely outrageous.
Hey, look, Bob to his friends.
Apparently so. Eventually, he does make his debut, April 5th, 2003, versus Bolton. The next game he plays in Middlesbrough, he man marks Juninho and he gets man of the match. He is away. Gonna fly now, as he says.
Yep, interesting.
And it's at this point that, I mean, he confesses, he starts to undermine Keggy. And Man City are going a horrible, horrible stretch and don't win for 3 months.
But there's a few instances where he does this kind of thing, where he just actively tries to, like, as you say, destroy colleagues, teammates, whatever. But fair enough, to some extent. I've never heard that before, but I suppose these guys are in competition. But yeah, also a few times with managers, just actively, and like, this is his first team experience. Yeah,
he's a kid at this point. There's a point where he says, perhaps it wouldn't be the worst thing. Me and Richard Dunn decided it wouldn't be the worst thing to have Stuart Pearce as manager. And then that's what they engineered.
Yeah, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Barton kind of writes this book as though he repeats over and over again how he's kind of changed and he's reformed and he's seen the errors of his ways. Like, when you read that for like the 25th time, you're like, I'm not sure about that. But what is interesting is he's reformed, that was a different me. I'm a changed man now. But he's never, in his own recollection of anything, ever wrong. It was always someone else to blame.
It's always someone else to blame, no matter what happens. And
Yeah.
that's what we're getting on to now, isn't it?
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah.
So if you're unfamiliar with the name Jason Tandy, Joey Barton's very, very happy to tell you who he is, isn't he?
Yeah. So they're on a Christmas night out. Everybody is burning each other's clothes, which is fun, obviously. And then the night kind of moves on, and people aren't burning jackets anymore. But Tandy comes back and does it to Barton in front of people like Fowler and Richard Dunn, these guys that he looks up to. And yeah, Barton doesn't like this, so he launches it.
There's a quote here. For the record, I never intended to stub that cigar out in his eye. Yeah, well, a lot of things. I never intended to kill that man on that day. Apparently, in the tabloid press, he was meant to be dressed up as Jimmy Savile, but he says that's not true, which is a real shame.
Yeah, who Tandy was, or Barton was?
Joey.
Yeah, but ultimately, the reason I'm saying about this blame thing is because he's like, this fucker, he tried to light my clothes on fire. It's like, but you had just done that to him, just done it to him, like.
Well, can I read the exact quote from the book? Jamie Tandy, a non-entity, but you might have heard of him. Here's the myth. Innocent kid has cigar stubbed down his eye by thuggish Premier League star. He suffers major psychiatric deterioration and his promising football career disintegrates. His life is ruined since he drinks heavily and has difficulty sustaining personal relationships. Here's the reality. Gobshite invites retaliation by setting fire to the shirt of a player who was a year above him in the academy and comes from a similar background. He lacks the character to eke out a career in professional sport and is consumed by self-pity. He is convicted of assaulting 2 female partners. Hello, Joey. Was I in the wrong on that night out? Absolutely. Do I regret what I did to Tandy? Every single day. Would I change the outcome? In a heartbeat. Do I have sympathy for him? Not in a million years. No, he doesn't. Like, good old Joey. He deserved it. He's a fucking arsehole and he deserves it. He made his bed, lie in it.
Yeah, my goodness. But that was the end of Tandy anyway, cigar in the eye. There you go. But yeah, they come thick and fast at this stage. And this is... They go to Bangkok. Like, apparently football teams should just not go to Bangkok. There's a tip for any team, because they all seem to get in trouble in Bangkok. But he's in a pub speaking to some City fan. No, it is an Everton fan. Sorry. And the Everton fan and him are having a nice time, but then the Everton fan gets on to abusing Fowler. And of course, Joey has no truck with this, and at some point they start arguing or whatever, and then the Everton fan's 15-year-old son kicks Joey Barton in the shin. So Joey Barton just goes fucking mental and attacks everyone, including Richard Dunn.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, the Christmas parties basically is what we're here for, isn't it? This is why everyone bought this book. If you're old enough to get involved, you're old enough to get a slap. Yeah, you are. Well, the kid got a slap.
He's not the only 15-year-old to get a slap from Joey Barton in this this book either. Like,
between the cigar stubbing of the eye and the slapping a kid in Bangkok, Joey manages to run over a Liverpool fan. The rules of the game became clear the following May when I accidentally ran over a Liverpool fan who had been celebrating the team's defeat of Chelsea in the Champions League semi-final. It was 2 a.m. and the city centre was bedlam. People were singing, intermittently blocking the road outside O'Neill's pub. I'd watched a game with some mates, but I hadn't been drinking. I tried to swerve to miss the fan, heard that dreaded resonant thump, and stopped immediately. Yeah, so it really was a bad few months for old Joey there.
Then the book takes a very dark turn with the murder of Anthony Walker by Barton's brother, his younger brother Michael, and a fellow called Paul Taylor, who was Barton's cousin. Anthony Walker is a young man who lived in the same neighbourhood as Barton. In fact, Barton said he was the only black family in the area, and it was a heinous, racially motivated crime in which Walker was killed with an axe. Like, this is as bad as it gets. And I suppose the really famous one in England is Stephen Lawrence, right? But I think Anthony Walker would be kind of mentioned in the same breath as the killing of Stephen Lawrence.
Yeah, this is a dark turn. It's difficult to talk about this because we don't want to make light. This is just a disgusting crime. Again, which is no fault of Joey Barton's. And I think as far as it went, he tried to do the right thing, right? He tried to do, he tried to get his brother back to face justice. He held no shrift. He didn't try and shelter him in any way. Yeah, it's just a really ugly, ugly story. And it puts into perspective any stupid punch-ups and cigar burnings, even slapping a kid in Bangkok. This is just real ugly, ugly stuff.
And significantly as well, he says that his brother Michael went on the run and ended up in Amsterdam and was calling Barton from there, like kind of telling him lies that he'd gone on a fishing trip and he'd nothing to do with this, la la la. And Barton went on television and appealed for Michael, the brother, to return. But they didn't. Michael and the cousin Paul Taylor, they didn't return voluntarily, but they were eventually arrested in Amsterdam. In a book that's quite violent and, as you say, is funny in parts, this is a really dark turn. So
it really does show you how trivial the other things were, little stupid fights and stuff. And then this is just really, really ugly and a real tragedy.
What Barton does then, like, it's such a clunky, like, the book takes this turn into this really dark chapter, and then he tries to come out of it in quite a clumsy way with this description of this kit man.
Oh, Les Chapman. That's it. I mean, chapter 8.
Some comedy kit man, which actually after dealing with the killing like reasonably well, this is just weird. It's just a weird thing to follow it.
So yeah, Les Chapman, here we go. I mean, I've got some quotes here. Les Chapman. He developed half a dozen personas, including a Lancastrian version of Adolf Hitler. Good stuff. Chappie would strut around the training ground in full uniform, screaming at the top of his voice while his stick-on moustache was being dislodged by a stream of spittle. That performance was postponed for obvious and understandable reasons when we signed Eyal Berkovic. But Michael Tarnat and Didi Hamann, our resident Germans, they loved it. Of course, they loved it.
So he'd come back from being in Bangkok, and he said he was expecting like the tabloids to really give him a kicking over what had happened there. And then what actually happened was the killing of Anthony Walker. And of course, that really was on a different level. And, football fans are not want to let things go. So I think he was really getting it from fans. But, in a true Barton fashion, he's talking about getting abuse from Everton fans, his old club, in relation to the Walker killing. And he flashes them. But then he's like, in true...
Well, not flashes them, like, he didn't expose himself front-wise, just a bit of bum action.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, he mooned them.
Yeah, I mean, that's better, isn't it? I mean, if he got his dick out. Take a look at that, Everton fans. This is what you could have won.
Anyway,
a bit of the mood,
but he says his justification was that Everton fans, quote, goaded me into it. Yeah, of course, Joey. I enjoyed the England stuff just because he's so bitter about it. Played 17 minutes as a sub against Spain in a friendly. I'll name 5 players, and do you want to tell me the order in which you would rate them? Okay.
Oh, yes, I would like to do that. So
Joey has the modesty to not count Gerrard and Lampard. But where do you think 2 questions. Where does he rank himself amongst Barton, Carrick, Hargreaves, Scott Parker, and Genius? And what order would you rank them? 5 players.
Baby. Top of the pile, I'd have Carrick. I think Hargreaves had a decent career, but we're injury prone, right?
Yeah.
I'd say Scotty Parker was a better player than Barton. And I'd probably have Joey Barton alongside Jennings in terms of quality. But he'd be at the bottom of the pile.
Anyway, Joey disagrees with you. He's better than all. He's better than all four of those. And
he sure is.
Yeah. But the thing about, like, he wasn't popular in the England squad because he'd been griping publicly about footballers in the squad in that was it the Euros or the World Cup, who'd been writing
the World Cup. Yeah.
Autobiographies.
I lost the World Cup. I played shit. Here's my book. Is that the exact quote? But it's certainly something like that.
Yeah.
He tweeted that out, right? He loves a tweet, doesn't he?
Yeah. Jared and Rooney, was it? Or did we should be making...
I think it was interesting because he does have enormous respect for Gerrard, right? He really does.
He does.
Gerrard sort of escapes everything. He also seems to have enormous respect for Michael Owen.
Yeah.
But zero respect for Wayne Rooney.
And that is interesting. Do you remember him as being a really excellent player? Like, if he didn't have that baggage, do you think he would have had a much better career?
I mean, at the time, I remember thinking he was a player who could do a job, and he was a 7 out of 10 player, a decent Premier League player.
He scored about a goal in 10 games, though. That's not bad for a midfielder of that type of midfielder. Like, he's coming from the base of midfield. The Osman Dabo stuff. Oh, Joey just can't help himself.
I mean, that is just, it's so exhausting again. He's creating trouble. There's a bit where, like, Osman Dabo was trying to get away from a situation, you can see it, and he's like, I was walking 10 yards behind him.
10 yards
nothing off at him. Just leave it, Joey. Leave it. He's your teammate. Don't have to get along with everybody.
In his telling of the story, Dabo was to blame for turning back. So just to say what happened, they were he didn't like a bunch of players in the City team, City squad. There was a bunch of, I think this is one of the parts where he kind of singles out lazy foreigners. Osman Dabo, I guess, he was one of the players that Barton didn't like, and he was putting a few spicy tackles on Dabo in training, as you do, trying to hurt your colleague. And then, they confronted each other. They started, fighting. And Dabo was escorted off the pitch with Barton, like, as you say, following him 10 paces behind, shouting abuse at him.
Here's one of Barton's modest quotes. If you go for the king, you better make sure you take him out. You're the king in this situation, Joey. It's just so insane. If you go for the king, that's like Pardew.
Dabo pressed charges, and Joey got a 4-month suspended sentence. Like, he got a 4-month suspended sentence and a 6-game ban. It seems a bit out of whack. And
don't you think, though, for him to actually press charges, it must have been much worse than Joey described, right?
City fined Barton $100,000, and that was before there was any decision on the actual criminal case. So again, Barton, of course, feels particularly betrayed by City, who he reckons kind of exposed him by coming down on Dabo's side. Dabo had he was knocked out and he had a detached retina. Like, that must have been a heck of a punch or punches.
And what was Dabo's real crime? He was doing a running commentary in French.
He says at one point in the book, he says it a couple of times actually. He refers to, like, the perception of him as having real thick skin. Did you think Joey Barton had thick skin when you read this book?
I did not.
Jesus I did Christ. Not. Just be flying off the handle and, like, that guy speaking French, hate him. Break his
Well, first of all, he responded sarcastically to the French speaking by telling him what a world-class player he was. But when that didn't register, I simply repeated ad nauseum that he was shit.
So he's off to Newcastle because City want, that's the end of City for him. Joins Big Sam. But he breaks his metatarsal and he's out for 3 months.
The old metatarsal, the bane of all English players from the northeast, like during the OOs. I remember literally I drew a little boot on my foot in about 2006 and did the wishful thinking that Rooney's metatarsal would heal. I was a grown man. I was a man grown, but I did it. I did. And it did heal. And he came back and was fucking terrible and got sent off.
Yeah, well,
Lovely stuff.
You're kind of to blame then, aren't you, really?
Well, me and a variety of other, and I'm embarrassed to say this, Sun readers, where I got the idea. Oh, God.
Really? Was that something else?
Yes.
It's like...
it was some sort of David Icke thing. Maybe it was a Yuri Geller thing. Like,
Yeah,
I think it might have been a Yuri Geller thing.
Sounds like Geller with the spoon on the television.
Yeah, you draw your boot on your hand, and you all think, heel, metatarsal. Worth a go, Johnny, wasn't it? Worth a go.
Yeah, that is good.
I genuinely did. Ugh.
Okay, and then, so Joey is in the depths of depression. He's out for 3 months. His career is kind of not in tatters, but I suppose he's not lining out with Liverpool and England as he feels he ought to have been. And he goes on the piss in Liverpool. And for the second time in the book, he attacks a 15-year-old.
He was only 15. He was only 15 years old. Come on, Joey. Stop hitting kids. I mean, you're never going to get sympathy with that.
But they were.
And what's fun was, I mean, he got arrested, right?
Yeah.
Initially, what he was most worried about was letting Michael Owen down, who was going to give him a lift to work in his helicopter. Oh, let down Michael Owen. I mean, he really does. He rates Owen as a person. He loves him. He's like sitting in prison going, the worst thing about this is I've let down Michael and his helicopter.
There you go.
There was a point, I think it's later in the book, where Mike Ashley offered to lend him his helicopter.
That was fun. I like that.
And then he gave him a big fucking invoice for it. You owe me this now, Joey. Yeah, he didn't like that.
So this is when... So he's already got a 4-month suspended sentence with Dabo. And then he's charged. So he's in McDonald's and some scallies, I think he calls them, are winding him up. He's out with his cousin and some friends and his cousin Nadine. And of course, in the Barton telling someone is to blame, someone kicked Nadine. Joey goes for one of the young lads and he wakes up in prison. The prison stuff was okay though, wasn't it?
If you will allow me. I mean, the opening paragraph to his prison chapter is absolute gold. Des O'Connor and Carol Vorderman inadvertently helped me through the inevitable existential crisis. I was watching them co-host Countdown. By the way, Des O'Connor, worst ever host by a country mile. I was watching them co-host Countdown, the TV game show, after a fitful first night and an endless first morning in Walton Jail, when my cellmate returned from his duties and switched channels without a word. The challenge was primal, as far from the mental gymnastics with numbers, vowels, and consonants as it gets. In such a harsh, enclosed environment, you are quickly categorized as victim, survivor, or enforcer. No one fucks with Joey's Countdown, mate.
Yeah, and it turns out that the fellow who came was totally, turns out he was actually totally fine.
Yeah, he was absolutely fine. After the primal challenge of having Countdown turned off.
Just Joey with his thick skin sitting there, absolutely flipping out over his Countdown.
Yeah, I was sitting there the other day watching Jeopardy, and in walks my daughter. The challenge was primal, isn't she? And she wanted to watch Jelly Ben and Pogo. This was as far from the mental gymnastics of Jeopardy as I could possibly see. I can't back down in that situation. Somebody needs to be put in their place, and I had to tell you, I had to put my daughter in her place.
Yeah.
He started at one prison, Walton, and then he was transferred to Strangeways. How the fuck is this chapter not called Strangeways? Here we come. How the fuck famed Smith's fan, and he ended up in Strangeways. The chapter's called Inside Out. Come on, Joey. Open goal, lad. There's your 1 in 10 goal record. Can't even poke it in from there.
Maybe Joey's, maybe it's the Alan Partridge thing. What's your favourite Smiths album? The best of the Smiths. He
was also in prison this time with a cousin who stabbed a kid at an 18th birthday party, killed him, but he avoided him in prison. Crikey, Joey Barton's family, eh? Crikey. Yeah, wow. So then, he's back at Newcastle and he's got old Kevin Keegan again. Yeah, because he's already pulled the rug out on once, hasn't he?
Ashley comes in. Keegan got thrown out. Keegan sued Ashley for $2 million. That's nice. Good for Keegan.
I mean, I root for Keegan in all circumstances. I want him to do well.
Remember that when Joe Kinnear came back? That was absolutely bonkers.
JFK.
Have you ever, in your lifetime of watching, reading about football, heard anyone say a nice thing about Dennis Wise?
No.
What's going on there? He must be the biggest prick in football.
I mean, he clearly is, isn't he? Remember, like Scholesy said, he used to like when he'd scrape down his studs, he'd knock you over, and then he'd pick you up, and as he picked you up, he'd be like pinching you on the like sensitive part of your arm, just gnarly, a horrible bloke,
And okay, well, this is fun, isn't it? Because then Shearer comes in, but Shearer and Dowie, which is relevant because Joey,
old boxing glove face.
Yeah, that is funny.
Picking on Dowie, the lowest hanging fruit in all of football, isn't it?
But Dowie is a rare footballer because didn't he essentially put a word in the English dictionary?
Yes, I believe he did, Johnny.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell me what it is?
Bounce back ability.
There he goes, lad. That's a good word.
That's a great word. So Shearer has them all doing like double sessions as it's getting towards the end of the season. And Barton says, we should be resting and working on tactics and this kind of thing. And football, I suppose. What was funny was, as you say, he loves Michael Owen, and he describes Ian Dowie lecturing Michael Owen on how to score goals. That was fun. Barton was out with this metatarsal injury, and he comes back, and he plays against Liverpool on cortisone, but he gets sent off. Of course, he has to put in all of the mitigating factors early, but he gets sent off for a deliberately bad tackle on Alonso. And we talked about this earlier here because Alonso stole his life, And he gets in the dressing room afterwards. Shearer accuses him of trying to break Xavi's leg.
We've seen it so many times. He can't deny it. Of course, he was trying to hurt him. Of course, he was.
And of course, Joey sits quietly in the corner then when Shearer attacks him. No, that's not Joey's style. He gets himself suspended from the ground. Barton, obviously, we see it now because he's become the kind of face of it, as you said, like kind of this kind of manosphere, kind of right wing kind of stuff, if you want. But he does, I think he sees himself as a kind of a political force to be reckoned with or something. He goes into it here with Ashley. And he's kind of got somewhat confused, maybe. Like, he seems to find common cause with people from working class backgrounds, and he does call out homophobia and racism at different times. Maybe that's tokenistic or not, who knows? We'll take him at his word. But he also hates the media. He doesn't particularly seem to like foreigners.
Or women.
Yeah. He says at various points how left-wing and liberal he is, but, yeah.
I mean, I believe he believes in unions and stuff. I think himself and the left have diverted paths at this point quite dramatically.
Yeah. I know it's not helpful to compare these books to previous ones we read, but I remember talking about Vardy when he was kind of wrestling with his friend on his first date with the woman who became his wife, Rebecca. But there's Barton does something similar, but it's just a lot more menacing. So on his first date with Georgia, he ends up on the street fighting a fellow diner.
How was your date? Yeah, it went well.
Yeah.
He seems like a nice guy.
And then he mentions that friends from Liverpool, connected friends, I suppose, they managed to identify and track this man down and call him up. And then the man had to call Barton and apologise.
That would be hard to swallow, wouldn't it? That would be very difficult. Hi, Joey. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry for what I did. You weren't at fault, and I underestimated your mental strength.
Do you know what I find annoying? He talks about what he thinks about people, but he never gives us kind of the juicy morsels that we really crave. So he talks about rumours from Alan Pardew's private life, but he doesn't say what they were. That's annoying, isn't it?
You think maybe he did say what they were, and lawyers said no?
Do you reckon Do you know
Have
what
you any inkling of anything untoward about Pardew, other than being a bit of a knob?
There was that story about him taking a dinner off another diners, like he was eating with someone and took the steak off the other fella's plate. So he's obviously a fucking lunatic. But
just let your dinner. When you're a king, you can do anything, right? That's famous.
Pardew again kind of comes in and goes out very quickly. Not much to say about Pardew. I did enjoy the Warnock stuff. Joey Barton's take on Warnock is that Warnock is not the straight talking Yorkshireman he wants you to think he is.
I mean, I can't imagine a straighter talking than old Neil Warnock. See, the thing is, if anyone disses Joey, that just makes them terrible, right? If you don't like Joey, then that's because they're an awful person.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Warnock's a great person.
Joey's almost has the same problems. Like, he's got problems with various, again, foreign players playing for QPR. The player he has a particular problem at QPR is Abel Turat, who just seems to be really talented and disinterested, and then can turn it on every now and again when it suits him, and then it's just kind of, a lazy foreigner in Joey's eyes.
This is undeniable, right? Because I think going back to Newcastle, Kinnear took him aside and asked him what he should do. And genuinely Joey's response was, fuck off all the foreigners.
Barton says Warnock lost the dressing room after Joey Barton put 3 nasty tackles on Turat in training.
Well, there you go. I mean, he accuses...
And again, another threat of legal action here from a training ground incident. And let me add, Joey Barton was captain.
Captain. Well, this is it. He justifies himself here. He goes, I don't know if it's true that Turat spat at the laundry lady. I don't know if it is true, but I'm going to put it in my book. But he was certainly rude to her.
Warnock sacked. And then comes Mark Hughes. He's got some beef with Hughes, but it's never actually quite clear what it is.
Joey's first season at QPR ends up with the legendary Man City Aguero game. And this is, of course, where Joey Barton absolutely disgraces himself. But not in Joey's eyes. He's watching Balotelli. But I am analytical. I am detached. I'm going to punch about 3 people. That's analytical and detached. He thought he was doing it for the team. He's like, I'll unsettle them by getting sent off and like rattling everyone.
He really made an idiot out of himself, Joey Barton, didn't he?
It's just, again, though, in his mind, at that point, he was analytical. He was detached. It was a maelstrom around him. He was lost in the circumstances.
And he had
so QPR had a season whereby they managed to remain in the Premier League, but Joey was persona non grata.
He goes on loan to Fleetwood, which I didn't really understand what he was saying there. He went kind of where some old friends were, but
he said he wanted to go, didn't he? He said he wanted to go there, but in fact, he got a better offer.
He immediately went to Marseille. Yeah, I'd say he wanted to go to Fleetwood. All right.
I admire him for this, though. I mean, why not? I mean, who'd play for QPR if you could play for Marseille? I mean, in all honesty.
The answer to that is like 99% of footballers, I think. Because
that's right.
It's the money, I guess, ultimately. But and I suppose it's London as well, to be fair.
It is London. But I fancy a bit of Marseille. I think if I were a pro footballer, I'd planned my career many times, Johnny. I'd have a year at Marseille as well. Lovely stuff. The velodrome. Nice. Oh, it's so sexy.
And he liked
shirts.
He liked the French football fans, their attitude to the footballers, and most importantly, I suppose, in Joe's eyes, their attitude to him. They liked him.
Well, that's it. I mean, he had his sweet and tender hooligan banner at his first game, which is another Smith reference, which must have felt great, right? That must have felt great.
Yeah.
But he has a lovely time in Marseille, and by all accounts, he does pretty well for them. Again, the French league probably is about his standard at this point.
Yeah, and he says that he learnt a lot there. He doesn't get into talking about football all that much in the book. But he does say he learned a bit in Marseille. Kind of gave him a kind of a different kind of tactical awareness. I think he wanted to stay around, but he ended up going back to QPR, which was a big surprise.
Well, he sort of wants to stay around, but doesn't he really intimate that basically it was the money that took him back to QPR?
Oh yeah, well for sure. What was very funny was, so again, he talks about Redknapp. Joey Barton, like young Hawkins in Treasure Island, happens upon a mutiny. And he goes into Harry and he's like, Harry, the players are about to mutiny, you know? And but Joey, on this occasion, for whatever reason, maybe because he wasn't the principal plotter himself, he jockeyed himself as some kind of go-between. And I think actually the managers that Barton ends up liking are the ones who give him a lot of control. Not even over like, you know, how much he plays, but how much he controls like the team. And so when he's back at QPR, they've been relegated the year he was at Marseille, if I'm not mistaken. And then so they're fighting to come back up. And this stuff is kind of fun because there's a little bit more going on here in terms from a sporting sense. You know, there's playoffs and that kind of thing. So there's, even as you read it, you get more of a sense of jeopardy in what's going on in his sporting career. But yeah, he likes to paint himself as the kind of strategist and the man motivator. I did enjoy him calling Benoit Asso Ikoto the, quote, biggest egg he ever met in football. I quite enjoyed that.
An egg. Yeah, a big egg.
Yeah.
Asso Ikoto was a porn star, right? Or that was the rumour? That's what I seem to remember most about him. He did porn and hated football.
Oh, there you go. But yeah, he's with Harry and they're in the championship and they get to the playoffs. They go up. Do you remember those playoffs?
I do remember that playoff. Yeah, I absolutely. I remember the playoff final very clearly. I was on a beach in Africa watching that, Johnny.
Yeah.
It was QPR versus Derby.
Was it? It was McLaren, wasn't it?
At Derby?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Anyway, who scored the goal? Because I looked at the goal. Was it Bobby Zamora?
It was Bobby Zamora.
Yeah, it was a nice goal as well. Oh, actually, and it was Richard Keogh, like, who gave the goal away. Like, what a disastrous thing to do in the playoff final.
Well, I mean, you say that, but really it wasn't. The person that lost the game for Derby was Chris Martin, because he said they had no chance of winning. They all prickled at that, didn't they? That was it. It's like, this lad, we got no chance, have we? Well, I'll show you, Chris Martin.
Yeah, sticking
at
on
the end when Chris Martin was crying, big man Joey Barton went over and gave him an arm around the shoulder. But they still mocked him the season after, even when they were getting absolutely dicked week after week. Apparently the QPR players go, at least we're not Chris Martin at Derby. He also at QPR that season gives Harry some straight talk. I don't know how you've done it, Harry, but everyone thinks you're a cunt. Oh, hello, Joe. Would you like to come in?
From QPR to Burnley. I wasn't surprised. Well, maybe I was surprised to learn that he liked Sean Dyche because he didn't like any managers really, but he loves Sean Dyche. He fucking loves him.
Well, again, that would have been a coup, I would have said, for Burnley at that point, right? I mean, Joey Barton was an established Premier League player. He would have done great in the Championship. I think that's his true level, right? I think that's his true level. He would have been an excellent Championship player. I think in the modern game, he would have been a Championship player.
Yeah, and I guess Dyche is kind of a man's man, isn't he? And significantly for Barton kind of intimates, certainly in the book, that Dyche kind of let him be that kind of main organizer in the field and in the dressing room, that kind of thing. And this is ultimately, again, what Barton likes. I think
it's fair to say that Sean Dyche is a man's man. I think it's certainly true to say he's not a ladies' man, is he?
So they got in like sports psychologists to do a kind of a profile of every player. And Barton includes the entire profile that they did of him.
This is insane. It's so insane. It's 5 pages saying how good Joey Barton is. And he included, it's 5 pages long. Considering his background, the fact that he has a 10-year professional career where he earned that much money has to be respected. Yeah, he had so many opportunities to go completely off the rail. And when he did on the whole get himself back.
And like, you know, you say his his background, which is, like I say, from this absolutely incredibly violent family situation, but also as a player, slow, small. Yeah, he's a plucky underdog, is Joey B.
But he's just so bloody difficult. He's so bloody difficult. If he could have he's one of those people, and this is what he's deeply proud of. It's like someone on Big Brother is like, you know what I mean? I say what I think whenever I think it, and they think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And they're the worst people. They're the worst. You can't just say what you think. That makes you a sociopath. You have to keep it inside, dude. You might think they're all arseholes. Just don't say it. I mean, we all get confronted with people we don't like at work. Just keep it inside, son. It's being professional.
It's not even that he says what he thinks. He physically assaults the people, the colleagues that he doesn't like. The book peters out in the same way, I guess, Barton's career petered out. And the thing about Barton is that it's all of this, the world is out to get him, and he's unfairly treated, and I've really reformed, but the other person was wrong and I wasn't to blame anyway. And, I suppose that's fine if it's like a couple of times, but it must be 15 times in the book, No,
well, absolutely. He just nobbles himself time and time again, like it. And if it doesn't, he just keeps trying, right? Sticking a cigar out in someone's eyes, not enough. I'll knock over a Liverpool fan. All right, still not good. You want more? You want more? I'll punch a player. You want more? I'll punch a kid. I'll punch another kid.
Yeah. He goes to Rangers, right? But he
goes to Rangers, absolutely. And he writes a lot about the proud traditions of Rangers. There's quite a lot about it.
Yeah.
His thoughts on playing football up there.
And
then, what did he last 5 games?
He was suspended for a 3-week training ground incident at Rangers as well.
Well, I mean, that's
is that even in the book? Is it even in the book?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I read about that on Wikipedia. Some guy called Andy Halliday. Joey got 3-week suspension from Rangers. So yeah, like you said, maybe at times he's not entirely truthful. So yeah, the Rangers thing only lasted 5 games, largely because of the gambling, but maybe also because of him just doing Joey Barton things.
Interesting, isn't it? I mean, you can punch and kick and hurt as many people as you like. You can come back. But you make a few bets. 18 months, lad. 18 months.
Yeah, and actually on this one, so I think everybody is willing to be sympathetic when Barton makes the obvious point that like football is so hypocritical, right? In that like players, Ivan Toney, I guess, is the big example recently, and then the couple of players in Italy recently as well, right?
Can I just interject there? Ivan Toney. Do you know what his middle names are?
No.
Do you not know this?
No.
Anyway. He is Ivan, Benjamin, Elijah, Tony. What are his initials?
IBET.
That's true.
That's nice.
It's giving it away. He never stood a chance for that. He never stood a chance. Nominative determinism.
But with Barton, I think, I want to be sympathetic. But, he mentions in the book, he plays 15,000 bets.
This was 15,000.
In 10 years. That's 1,500 bets a year. Like 5 a day. Okay, I don't know. Like maybe if you're a footballer, you got a lot of time. But sorry, what I was going to say is that like I think everybody wants to be sympathetic, and like when a footballer makes a point of how hypocritical football is here, because you can't watch football without seeing things about gambling, and then these guys get suspended for placing bets. But 15,000 bets, including betting against his own team, and that's a big problem.
Is that right? There were bets against his own. Well, that's insane. Obviously, I mean that's where you have to.
He wasn't playing in the games. He'd been suspended, or he'd been, and he says he was kind of doing it out of sour grapes essentially. But he's still. I think he said 10 bets.
That's just stupid.
He got 18 months, but that was reduced by 5 months on appeal. But it ended his career really. And the book is written in a way that he's coming back, but he never came back. So the whole book is about how he's reformed himself, and then it ends on this kind of fizzles out with this, well, then I got suspended for 18 months.
So, your overall thoughts?
I think this was the least interesting of the books that we've read. And I wouldn't recommend this book. I'd give it like a generous 2 out of 5.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I enjoyed the fighting bits. I mean, the bit in Bangkok's fun. The cigar, dressed as Jimmy Savile, that's fun.
I just wish he was more fun. He's not a fun person.
He is not fun. No, laughing and joking doesn't seem to be in his vocabulary, eh?
No, and certainly not laughing about himself.
So, yeah, he takes himself incredibly seriously.
So seriously, Christ. When we said, let's do this particular book, I was interested because he's not even a divisive character. I think most people are agreed. Like, he's a controversial character, I suppose. And I was interested in that, but it was a big letdown, really.
Well, that's what he appears to do with his career now. He's just become he's just a controversialist, right? He just wants to rile people. He sees himself as a spokesman for the working class, but I really don't think he deserves that.
Yeah, I think he's probably just a bit of a prick. And what's concerning, I suppose, is that, you know, at one point in the book, he kind of compares himself to Conor McGregor. And both of these individuals recently have been doing similar stuff, in the sense that they've kind of been involving themselves with kind of like questionable politics, we'll say. And I think both of them are similar in that they seem to be individuals who need the oxygen of attention, you know. And I think an idle Joey Barton is not a good thing. I think he is, for all the things he said about his work ethic and all the rest of it, I think he needs stuff to do, Joey. And I think he will busy himself one way or another.
Well, that's it, Joey. Yeah, Joey's now become sort of like football's Andrew Tate, right? He's football's misogynist. And I tried to avoid his recent proclamations in order to read this book with a more open mind, because he's getting worse, right?
Yeah, well, I suppose if you're someone like Barton and you have this behavioural kind of tendencies where he keeps getting himself into these terrible scrapes, you know, in sports and outside sports. But he has one thing that will pardon him, and that's his ability to play football. But that's gone now. So, you know, like...
Yeah, that's it. And he's not a manager anymore.
No.
And he never will be. His win percentage is about 30% at Bristol, Rovers and Fleetwood Town. So this is what he's got left now, isn't it?
Yeah. And thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and please tell your friends.
Yeah, and if you have any suggestions or any interesting autobiographies you'd like us to do, we'd be delighted to receive them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Al.
Thank you, Johnny.